Right, welcome to another lesson for your pre-recorded week H Radio 223 part-timers. We are onto a brand new subsection of learning, which is collaborating with other media, one of three. And this is from the Next Level Radio textbook, chapter 6.5 or 6.5, 6.5.1 owned media 2292230. Right. Okay. So within these particular three lessons, we are going to talk about owned media, earned media, and paid media. At the end of this lesson, I do want to actually show you this. It's a great lecture from someone that knows a lot more than I do about digital advertising and digital marketing. And it is particularly about, let me just quickly get this because I wanted to, I know that's on own media, which is quite clear, is on earned media, right? Which will then phase over to the next lesson, right? Okay. But we have these 13 slides that we're going to get through, and we're going to watch the tutorial, or it's the seminar, right? Okay, so really hope you are doing well. I have we have obviously moved past the formative three, and please, I mean, if you can, for whatever reason, do this up. Please do your best to do that because I a disclaimer: there was no submissions from the part timers, so please do attempt that. Otherwise, we have to move forward and look ahead at the S1. I do want to also brief you with the summative one. Next weekend, please be in class as we are doing our contact class again. Next weekend, I think that's on let me check the date. That will be on the 4th of October. Good Lord. Oof, okay. We don't have long left, of this year, nor of our academic year. Okay, right. When we collaborate with other media, we are, yes, look, I want to do a bit of an overview as to what earned and owned and paid media is all about. You can try and just imagine, well, yourself creating, let's say, a blog post, right? So a blog post is hosted somewhere, on the internet as like, whatever domain you may own or whatever it is. Like for example, I have the chrisjordanmedia.net domain, and my webpage has grown over years. Um, there's a lot of articles that I won't regularly. I suppose that's a bad thing, because we always talk about you know being consistent and so that you can keep growing your numbers, etc. What I do want to say in hindsight of that, so what I do is when I do have certain events or I do have certain products coming out, I will start releasing just like a set of scheduled posts that I'll write beforehand and schedule them over weeks to be shared there on social media, right? Uh, so so and things that the traffic is good. A landing page is great. So a landing page is where you would find predominantly your earned media, right? So the cultivation of, for example, let's say all your social mediums are there, like I say, your personal blog posts, your products, or whatever it may be, right? Okay. So that is owned. It's mine. I don't have to pay anyone for being able to advertise, let's say, any of my products, which is my audiobook and my book. I don't sell T-shirts like Ponang, but maybe I should one day. Anyway, I would place it there, and then I'd give a review of my own T-shirt, for example, right? But uh, but in all seriousness, let me go back to what happens there is that then my site is linked, for example, to Google and Analytics, right? And then what happens is that I can see this because there's quite a lot of traffic on the site, and that's predominantly one because I know how to use SEO, meta tags, etc., etc., etc. And so the thing is that I get a couple of thousand people coming to the site every single month, right? Just have a read through, subscribe, that type of stuff, right? Okay, and sometimes yes, they do download my audiobook or buy my book, right? So that is completely its own media, right? It's mine, it's my own, as well as, should I want to go and extend kind of that collaborative effort. It's like that piggyback off another platform where again I own the account, I own the social media account on then Facebook, on TikTok, on Instagram, as well as X, and what is the last one? I keep forgetting now. This was the big five, right? And LinkedIn, right? Okay. I can go and I do and I have before gone to advertise those products, advertise, let's say, or cross promote my podcast, etc., etc. And that's the definition of earned media. If we move to owned media, then we go to earned media, and again, this doesn't really it's not going to hit home till I obviously go through the slide, right? But earned media is basically when someone goes and takes whatever they find from mine and shares it somewhere else. That's the long and short of it, right? So they share it there. We don't pay anything. We've earned it. And then we have paid media, which then is, for example, us taking that particular book or audiobook or whatever it may be, or t-shirt or whatever it may be on your landing page. And then what we do is we go and find sites or platforms that we can go and create digital advertising for, right? So that's paid media. Okay. In modern radio campaigns, we don't only focus on recorded spots anymore, but what we also do is that we can offer the same thing that you just heard me like carry on about now to our clients as well. So commercial radio stations now have many more channels to offer to advertisers and on which to promote their own campaign and their own messaging, right? So we're going to look at the book, there should be some examples of breakdowns of how much something typically would cost. Let's say like 45,000 bucks for a let's say an online bundle or package, whatever, where it says there, there'll be 2 or 4 Facebook posts, and there'll be 2 Instagram posts, and there'll be 2 X posts, and there'll be 2 TikTok posts, or whatever it may be, with regard to your product or your service that we are actually also, advertising or running the spots for on air, right? As well as maybe even doing, let's say, a competition or whatever it may be, right? Okay, so here's a bunch of places that we now have to be able to have the opportunity to push some kind of marketing as well, right? So the website space, as I said to you, very essential. It is the most important out of all of our outlets, right? Okay, the landing page is really helpful, but also once again, it sets you apart very distinctly from anything else that could be considered, let's say, clutter between the consumer's eyes, so the person that's using the internet, as well as, let's say, whatever it is they want to consume, right? So a website is nice and clear, it's focused, it's core, it's elemental, I would say, right? Okay. Social media accounts of people that work for us at the station, obviously the SMS and phone data lines, right? So us being able to use WhatsApp, etc., to be able to, reach out to our listeners, direct feedback from listeners. So again, focus groups and surveys, pre and post listener feedback data. Um, so that should be pre an event, pre a competition, pre yeah, probably like that, more than likely like something like that. And then post the competition, post the event data that we do get from them. On the ground activation team, so very old school, not quite sure whether this is done at stations anymore. We would have something called, let's say, like a ground patrol was something we used at Prime Media for many years, right? And we'd have three young people, so aged between, let's say, about 19 to about 21, I would say, and they would ride around our feeder area. So, for example, in Gauteng, in these humongous like 4x4s that were branded very, I want to say not abrupt, that's the wrong word. So, bombastically, right? So, you could see that this was a 947 car, right? And there was 947 people in there, and they would go and do ground activations, on the ground activations, standing in traffic, handing out stuff to people at events, and going to shopping centers, etc. Right? Okay, eventing capabilities, right? Programmatic buying of the generic component of a promotion on their streams, stream only capabilities, podcasting capabilities, video production capabilities, and of course, endorsements with and from their talent. So many different opportunities to be able to go and quote unquote make money is obviously very important for any station to stay alive, right? Okay, do more than stay alive and thrive, right? In 2025. Oh boy. Okay, I'm starting with dad jokes, right? So, yes, that is one thing. But two, also, there isn't a station without these things, right? There's there might be a station there, but it's not a very good one if they don't have or incorporate the most of what you see here, right? Just listed here as much as they can within the resources that they do have available. And again, I always think that, look, I feel like a station might be making an excuse and say, oh, we can't podcast, oh, we can't do live streaming, we can't do like a put together a little video here and there. And you really can. And you know why? Because every single other person on this planet is doing that for their own personal accounts that you see on social media, and they do it with ease. So it doesn't really take money, necessarily to go and create these all these added value or different outlets of campaigning or marketing or whatever it may be, right? Content creation. Right, so whenever a radio operations team member is designing a promotion or competition, they must consider all of the methods and means of communication available to them. So the types of communication tools and platforms available to radio stations today can then be divided into one, owned media, earned media, and paid media, as I've explained to you what each one is just briefly, right? So, great marketing strategies to be able to leverage all these three types that you do see there, and that they are intertwined. You will see there as well. There is a point, says there, a point of intersection where owned, earned, and paid media do culminate in a comprehensive marketing strategy, and that makes sense, right? Because the thing is that if you what you're going to do if you can't own if you don't have own media somewhere, right? How can you expect someone to go and share any media if you don't have any media that you've created, right? And perhaps more than likely you would take that media and you would use it within your marketing campaign, your paid marketing campaign, right? So brand driven and unique and owned media, sorry, let's go through each one now. So, owned media is brand driven and unique to each particular brand. The radio station's brand can control what is published and shared in the station's voice. The radio station's output, along with its shows and content, can be owned media for the station. So, as I said, please, I mean that landing page is so important. Plus, obviously, once again, all those social media sites and opportunities that you do have to share more and more and more content. I know it's exhausting, but that's someone's job, right? In this day and age, it's not anything new. It's in fact, I think it's mandatory what's considered mandatory, right, for every single company to have some kind of digital marketing specialist, right? Even if it's one person, they are trained, one, they're educated academically so, and also experienced within, obviously being able to use and work and really kind of, I say, move through the digital space. So again, just to include everything as an opportunity from again social media platforms to social messaging to again websites, microsites, blog sites, a radio station's website is their digital home. The space where they have the most control over their content. They got the social media platforms, mobile and mobile sites and applications. So things like, for example, download a radio station's app, right? And the app will come with a bunch load of new stuff that you can only find on the app. And so it makes it useful. It's not just this little app that has people's like profiles and you can stream the station and maybe listen to some of the podcasts. It's a bit boring, right? You can find that on the site as it is. So why not? There is no appeal. I'm saying to you, there is no actual appeal to downloading an app that just mimics um, a website, you know. Anyway, a wider presence gives the radio station a better chance of a people seeing, hearing, and understanding of people, should I say, seeing, hearing, and understanding the messages, which then drives the objective of having more people consume and engage with the station's content, right? All right, so with owned media, once again, it's usually the destination for where we want the listener to go to, right? So in a nutshell, owned media is anything a radio station has direct control of. So let's look at the three C's, and you can go and have a look at this particular link over here. Right, there is also just let me reach on over, make sure that my textbook is close at hand because we are going to be reading an example out of there soon. Just put that over here. Right, so let's look at the three C's taken from Making Sense of Owner or Owned Media by Mark Bonchek. Bonchek, I want to make him sound fancy. Right, content. We have to have good content or content in general. Well, I don't know, good content. I'm gonna stick to good content because you know what? Here's my thing. I see. Let me use an example XFM, whatever it is. And the thing is that let's say they now post, they create a post and it's beautiful post. It's got so if it's wonderful, it's nice to always see like a well produced social media post. You know, it's got this, got it's got transitions. There's some music there and some dramatic laughing and all that. Anyway, sorry. Okay, I'm not going to be judgmental. Anyway, my point is. So we've now seen this personality of this DJ, right? Why on earth? Why on earth is it on cycle and in repeat? So in other words, maybe a week and a half later, we've got a similar post again. But it's also about the quirks of this DJ, but the quirks of the DJ are repeated again. Ah, we love his demeanor, or we love how sweet he is, or my word, please, coffee cup quotes. Okay, all right. We all have our preferences, but yeah, that's one thing for me. Please don't preach when at the station must not preach. Yeah, go out and do your best, or you can do your best because you are the best. Ugh, ugh. Again, what is social media actually about? What is media about? Talking to people directly and personally and authentically about what it is that they can understand as a real person or a real message or a real. Hey, you see, I must move on from that. It's sitting in the back of my head. Content, please. Yeah, community and in context. Why? Why? Why are you telling about this DJ who has a fun outlook on life. Come on, man. Like if it's within let's say let's say like a mental wellness month or whatever it is, sure, go ahead and do that. But geez Louise, like no to everything else. Anyway, The foundations, so content is at the foundations of own media and its strategy are your content channels. So this is where you're going to deliver your content directly to audiences, unmediated by a third party. Any third party is like, for example, like a third party, if you are, let's say you are the first party, I'm not quite sure the second party is, but a third party, for example, is someone or something that is linked to, let's say, the social media account, you know? So, not necessarily, I wouldn't consider the social media account being the third party. They could be, okay, yeah, this makes sense. Let's say you got your company, your station, excuse me, you as the content creator are the second party, and the third party is, for example, the social media, a social media platform, right? So, you see, it's not when we have owned media, our own, like no one from Facebook or TikTok or whatever is telling us, no, but you can't say that, you can't do that, right? Which there's a bunch of really long collective rules now, which is good. It's a good thing for TikTok, right? Where you can't even say certain words. So sorry, just want to drink some water. Where you can't say certain words, which is good, like, because just there's a bunch of words in this world that are super offensive and are not really applicable, or there's another word for it, but anyway, it's just not meant for, let's say, a younger audience or whatever it may be, right? Anyway, but most common channels, like a website, your mobile apps that you do own, the key to a successful content channel is that you have engaging content that is relevant and valuable. I swear, me, I always share directly. Like I've dedicated the last portion of my year to really, really, really study. Study and apply, slowly study and apply, slowly study and apply the intricacies of digital marketing, because I do know enough, but I don't know. I suppose it's enough that would get me by, perhaps maybe 5 years ago, and not exactly in 2025. So for me, like this, and I would also say, let's say, uh, direct this to you as well. Let's go figure out how we can actually use digital platforms and the digital space a lot more effectively, because things change continuously. The key to a successful content channel is that you one engage. That's what my point was. Is engagement. It's fine. You can tell someone engage, 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 engage. It is maybe the highest value that you're going to get out of anything that you do put on social media is if people interact with you, because that's the thing, and obviously how that affects the algorithm and the traffic and this and that. But it also is about, and again, if you're going to connect with someone, the connection makes all the difference, right? And how do you retain that? How do you build that? How do you whatever it is? There's so many questions that are not answered. Well, here I suppose definitely not. I'm not too sure as to how far it is, or how much of it is answered in your digital studies, like your digital marketing studies, right? Anyway, but that you're using all available data to personalize the experience for the user. So let's look at community. While content channels focus on the connection between you and your customer, community emphasizes the connections your customers have with each other, right? So want to be able to make sure that the same type of people, say, when I say same type of people, we're talking about their lifestyle. Remember, always lifestyle, 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 not necessarily age and race and gender just yet, but the same type of mindset that like your product, like your radio station, etc., right, are the people that we are creating this content for. So these can be online, virtual communities, or private social networks, or offline, so in-person gatherings or events. They can direct discussion forums or be indirect, peer benchmarks. What about context, right? So context super important. You heard me almost lose my cadenza at like when I'm recording this, which is like 3 in the morning. Right. When it's time to have a cadenza, it's time to have a cadenza. Oh boy. Oh boy, I'm just thinking of that post. Oh my word. It's so blah, blah. Anyway, the context you you need some mechanism for turning isolated interactions into a connected experience. So, what does that mean? In other words, once again, this requires an ability to capture data, something that's happening, right? And turn that data into something that actually means something to your customer. Anyone that we refer to, we don't refer to them as listeners when they are online. They're a consumer when they are online. Loyalty and reward programs provide this type of context for B2C, so business to consumer companies, while strategic account and relationship management programs do the same for B2B, so business to business companies, right? So just to kind of define that quickly, business to consumer, businesses selling products and services directly to consumers with no middle person, like um, I suppose small businesses are easier. Um, uh, I want to say why I'm pausing so much is Take a lot is business to consumer because we you can buy, for example, like well, I've seen it on Amazon. You can buy like bread, and you can buy milk, and you can buy whatever it is, like a piece of cheese, and Amazon will deliver that to you, right? Not so sure here, obviously, right? But overseas, that's how far down the rabbit hole you can go with Amazon, right? Business consumer, take a lot is business consumer because they will deliver, for example like a box of Omo or whatever it is, right? Just like a shop would, you know. But business to business, a business selling products and services to other businesses is a little different, right? And not exactly those sites that we go to. All right. Let's see what this see some examples, right? Content, community, and context come together in the own media strategies of today's most innovative marketers. And these brands create engagement platforms that pulls prospects of customers towards them. So, for example, Sephora is one of them. Created its own channel for delivering content, its own communities for building connections, and created a context for capturing data and creating value. The building blocks are Sephora's loyalty program. So the mobile app, the beauty talk community, and the color IQ service. You can obviously see that the products or the services and products, the kind of like the bells and whistles, like this beauty talk communities, like the color IQ services, really obviously very specific to the niche of beauty, or the industry or the beauty industry, right? Okay. And customers can use, like, for example, the Color IQ service to find the best shade of makeup for their skin, access preferences in their profile, see recommended products in the mobile app, and discuss tips and techniques with experts and peers through the online community. It was really cool, right? There's another example over here. So Vale Resorts created an owned media platform called Epic Mix to engage skiers for its results. What did it do? Well, it's a cross between a social network and an adventure game. So RFID technology in the lift tickets track the location of skiers and their friends on the mountain and their time on the various runs, right? They earn badges, post photos, send messages, and compare times through the Epic Mix mobile app. So, in large part due to Epic Mix, Vail Resorts grew revenue, profitability, and market share through the recent recession, while others fell behind. Let's look at a couple more. Okay. So, owned media strategies are of a particular interest to companies who want to create direct relationships. For example, like Nike has created the Nike Plus running community. Under Armour is developing an own media strategy around its recent acquisition of Map My Fitness. Craft Foods has created an entire community around recipes as social currency, and that's really cool. That's interesting. So each of these own media strategies share some fundamentals. First, they create value for people beyond the products being sold. Second, they use data, not just the way that to target a message. They actually look at that data, they analyze it, they see who their customer is, they see what their other interests are, they see when they are most active, they see how much money they have, they see what products they like, they do basket analysis, etc., etc. Right? It's a way to create a useful service, right? Based on all the data that they have. Third, they do treat people not as a passive consumer, but an active co-creator. That's powerful, right? Okay. Anyway, so there's let's see if I can just get it up here. I just want to see if it's not too long. Two, three, two, three. What is it? Two, three, 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 three. The paid media example at the bottom, 6D. Okay. If you look there, there's so just to switch both of those. So here, 60 goes to page 234. You'll see some imaging as well. And this is particularly for, let's say, like an email that people send out, right? Okay. So the following figures demonstrate how paid media so please read it with me, right? Okay, in a popular newsletter would work, right? So in this fictional scenario, oakleaf.com has an industry email newsletter that offers space for paid advertisements. The space is also bought by advertising agencies such as Mesa Ultimate, right? So in figure 6.5, turn over the page so we can make sure, right? 6.5. Oh, shit, but no. 6.5, we've seen that there's thumbprint marketing there, paid advertising in a newsletter. Thumbprint marketing is your one-stop shop for print and so on and so on and so forth. Right? So again, we have Oak Leaf, and within obviously the actual email itself that they do, let's say maybe send out politely, maybe once a week to subscribers, right? People that are in their database, right, that have registered for or subscribed for that newsletter. It will then include obviously embedded advertising, right, which is not it's not irritating to someone that does subscribe. I'm sure you do, or you have subscribed to newsletter, and you can tell the difference between, oh my word. The worst thing is one that it's the first and best reason to block, let's say, a company that is sending you newsletters or emails, should I say, right? Is if they say like um uh oh man, what is the word I'm looking for? But they have absolutely no shame, man. Twice a day, definitely every single day, they're sending emails. I don't want to know. We know your three products. We don't want to keep seeing it over and over again. Please, there's etiquette as well to make sure that you can keep the consumer interested, right, and also with you, by the way, as opposed to the irritation reaction, which is going to block you. It's at the end of the day. Okay, we just finished the 2 points here. Okay, So it says there, thumbprint marketing, right, is paid for advertising in the oakleaf.com newsletter, and the newsletter appears in subscriber inboxes, right? If we go look at figure 6.6, it provides information about how to advertise in the oakleaf.com newsletter, and that little red text is clickable content so that it can take you to some kind of actionable end, so a site where you can go and submit, let's say, your request and mm, get in contact with sales and this and that, whatever it may be, right? Okay. Stop that over there. Let me share this video now. Sit back and let's enjoy. Let's learn something together.
Hey guys, sorry I had to cancel this week's class. This week we are talking about earned media. I know some of you are majoring in PR, so this will be a good refresher course. I know that many of you have already taken classes from other instructors, so this is going to just give you my take on PR. And for those getting into advertising or creative or social media, it's important to understand public relations anyway, just because as you're thinking about strategically about campaigns and programs, you need to understand how PR fits into it. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. And again, this is all game for the final. So make sure that you watch this video, take notes, and ask questions. So if you have any questions, we will talk about it the week after next. So I wanted to reiterate, I like to go back to this slide every week just because it kind of grounds us in understanding what PR is and how it fits into the broader PESO model. So if you look here, if you watch my mouse cursor, this is the left circle really is meant to kind of show where earned fits into it. And you'll see things like influencer marketing, you'll see things like media relations, internal communications, analyst relations, etc. We're going to talk about those things. But I want to just, again, revisit this. Working in a silo, if you do work in PR, it's never a good thing, right? You have to connect and talk to internal teams so that everybody's on the same page as it relates to content and storytelling and the narratives. We've talked about this. So there's a couple of things, just important terminology. Okay, so this is, a lot of times these are used synonymously, but public relations is like an industry, right? It's like there are public relations teams and public relations, organizations within large companies, but it really doesn't specify the specifics on what you do. Right, so let's just read through it. Public relations is the practice of managing and disseminating information from an individual or an organization to the public in order to influence their perception. So PR is the function of managing brand reputation. Okay, so if there's a crisis, the PR team comes in and tries to manage that. You can imagine, for political figures or politicians, they have a PR team. They have PR teams that are literally working nonstop. Especially during election time, because politics, it often gets ugly, and they need to manage the reputation of the candidate who is running for office. So the same thing for companies, right? So if you work in a small company or a startup, most likely there's one person doing public relations, and they're doing everything, right? They're managing the function, they're managing the reputation, they're managing the media outreach, and everything else in between. So larger companies, you have different functions within public relations, or rather, responsibilities within PR that you might be responsible. We're going to talk through those. So earned media, sometimes also referred to as earned content, is any material written about you or your business that you haven't paid for or created yourself. So this type of media, although this type of media is always published by a third party, there are ways marketers can position themselves for earned media opportunities. So earned media is the result of public relations programs. It's again, it's a lot more specific and complicated isn't the right word, but detailed rather. But this is just, again, a blanket terminology. Now, there's types of PR that you need to be aware of. So media relations is usually people, if you work at an agency, you're just started, you're an AE or a double AE, and you are building media lists. So you're putting together a list of the top journalists in your industry, their contact information, where they write, who they write for, names, email addresses, etc., Twitter handles, social media handles, and you are like pitching them. You're reaching out to them when you have a story. You're sending emails. You're giving them you're calling them, and over time you build relationships with these journalists. They get to know you. So, an earned media strategist who's been in the industry for 15, 20 years can probably pick up the phone and call a journalist and say, hey, I have a story you might be interested in, just because over the years they have built that relationship. If you're just starting out, it takes time. So that is, media relations is, a strategist, somebody who understands who writes for, which journalists, which reporters, which editors are writing for which media publications. And, they know when they're making moves, when they leave one media company and go to another. Obviously, they know what beat that these media or journalists are writing for. Corporate PR is more, so that's media relations as a specific thing to do, right? Now, within that spectrum, there's what's called corporate PR. Now, that's like PR where you're managing the corporate brand. So think about companies like Adobe, right? Adobe has a corporate brand and they have products. So there's Adobe the company, there's Google the company, then there's product PR. So product PR is really about campaigns and programs that are announcing new products. So think about Adobe. Adobe has Photoshop, Illustrator, Acrobat. They have probably 15 or 20 different products, and each one of those products has different, different plans, different goals and objectives, different PR teams for sure, and different media targets, right? They're not the people who are the journalists who are writing about Adobe Photoshop aren't most likely going to be the ones that are writing about Acrobat, right? Because they're different industries. One's B2B, one's kind of B2C. So corporate PR is more about the brand reputation, right? Executives are part of corporate PR. It's also, you can see executive communications is also could be a standalone function. But somebody who works in corporate PR, is, looking at the stock price, is looking at executives, is looking at sustainability efforts, other kind of purpose-driven efforts that the business itself is managing, whereas product PR is focused solely on products and services within the umbrella brand. Executive communications it kind of falls within corporate PR, and there are executive communications experts, and they are writing bylines. So sometimes an executive will write a byline for the New York Times or Forbes, and the PR person will either write it for them and or pitch it to a media company like Fortune or Forbes to say, hey, I have a byline, would you be interested in publishing this? So the PR team manages the back and forth between all those comms. Usually when there are earnings announcements or events where executives speak at, there's an executive comms person that's right there standing by, just in case things are something is said, like an executive says something not very smart or says something that could be contradictory to something different. This is a very delicate group to work in because it's high visibility. If you're comfortable talking with executives, then that's great because you can, it's good visibility for you, but somebody who's just starting off in PR, they probably don't want to get into executive comms right away unless it's like a support function, just because it takes time for you to kind of get to know the executives, feel comfortable speaking in front of, the C-suite, etc. Employee and internal communications are kind of the same thing in a way, but in some organizations they fall in one group and out into another group. So you could have an employee comms person, and there could be an internal comms person who's different, or smaller companies might have one person do both. And it's really just managing the communications between the company and its employees. So think about companies like retail companies like Target. Right, you have corporate employees who are, I think they're based in Minnesota, I could be wrong, but the corporate teams, this includes marketing, PR, finance, etc., sales, they all work at corporate, right? They have company email addresses, whereas those who work in retail at the official Target shopping center, they don't have email addresses. Now, there's some that might, like the store manager maybe, but there has to be a communications between the company and employees. Now, again, it's a little bit more difficult for retail employees like Best Buy or Target or even Starbucks, right? So it requires kind of a different way of thinking and kind of managing those communications. Now, oftentimes you might have an issue where an employee from Starbucks or an employee from Target, is recorded on video and there's an altercation. I mean, you've seen these before, right? And so the PR teams have to manage those, right? So it's training, it's managing retail employees on what they should and shouldn't be saying about the company, about the revenue, profits, any other competitive or confidential information that needs to be managed. And that then is crisis management. So crisis management is, a company who is, maybe there was a layoff and, they're under fire by the media, or there was an employee, an employee or executive who was in some type of scandal, maybe it's sexual harassment or something like that. There are PR people who focus on managing crisis. So it's understanding what type of crisis it is, how it could potentially turn into something bigger, whether or not you need to respond and make public comment. All those things need to be into consideration. And then the last one is, organic influencer engagement. And this is typical for companies that have like any type of physical product. So think about, Logitech as an example. They have, keyboards, they have mice, they have, displays, they have a bunch of different things. And it could be anybody. It could be a vacuum cleaner company where they're giving away vacuums to influencers in an effort to have them write about it. So usually it's these types of, and it's kind of changing right now because with the whole, creator moving from influencers to creators, the dynamic is changing, but at a very high level, it is, a lot of PR people will treat influencers like journalists, give them a call, or send them an email and saying, hey, I work for Logitech and we would love to send you our new mouse that just came out. You can keep it and we would love for you to consider writing a review about it. And then the influencer will say, great, yeah, send it over to me, but I'm not going to promise anything. So there's never any promise. And sometimes there are contracts that'll say, look, you have to write something about this Logitech mouse. And, but you would never say you have to write good things about it, right? So you leave it up to the influencer to write what it is they want to write about, but there is an agreement to post an honest review on their channel. So those are the different types of PR. Okay, so here's an example of what earned media coverage looks like. And so, and I like to show it in the context of like a Google search, right? So here I am searching for, on the left, headphones. You can see that, now I clicked on news, right? So you can see if you watch my mouse, I clicked on news. In fact, if I click on this, I think it might even take me there. I think I linked to it. So let's try that. But you'll see that this is all coverage, right? You have everything from 9 to 5 Mac to Entertainment Weekly, The Washington Post, and The Verge. These are all very different media publications. So 9 to 5 Mac is very much about Mac products they talk about mostly, and it's more consumer tech focused. If you look at Entertainment Weekly, these are more about, if you read the headlines, it's more about deals, right? So Amazon Prime is coming, so they're writing about deals. Entertainment Weekly writes about a lot of things outside of just entertainment. So it is Hollywood, it is who's dating who, it is what's happening on television, it's anything related to the entertainment industry. But you can see here that they also write reviews about different products. And then the Washington Post, it's not really about products, but it's about headphones. So it's, if you read the headline, is it rude to ask someone to use headphones in public? So, and last one is The Verge, and that is a kind of a popular tech publication. So think about like if you're working for Mac or you're working for Bose, like see, if you look at this right here, the second piece of coverage, you'll see Apple and Bose in the headline. So obviously Apple's going to get a lot of coverage because it's just, they do. But if you work in PR and Bose, this is a pretty cool win, right? Maybe you pitch them. Maybe you're part of the reason why you had coverage. So that's something to consider. And then on the right, you have mascara. So just a random search for mascara. You can see everything from the Romper to the Zoe Report, Today, Yahoo, and the HuffPost. These are all consumer lifestyle related media publications. And you have everything from, a new Talika's Lash Growth Mascara. So this is kind of a review of that product. You have Item Beauty Boost mascara. So these are all reviews of different mascaras, L'Oreal, right? And I didn't even search for L'Oreal. So this is a great example. Now, if I search for L'Oreal, that's different. You're going to see different results. You might see more, obviously, more results with L'Oreal in the headline, but this is probably, a result of a PR person who had pitched this new perfect age, what is it? Paris Age Perfect Lash, whoa, magnifying, you know what I'm saying. So they pitched that and today picked it up. So if we look and just click on this, this is showing us the actual results, right? Now, obviously the results are different because I took a screenshot of the previous one. You have Wired, you have Tom's Guide, you have CNET, Yahoo, BGR, BBomb, Live 5 News. You start getting into the local news. But if you go over here and click on all, this is, we talked about this around paid media, right? This is, I'm searching for headphones. This is paid media, right? These are sponsored results. Scroll down here, you see top stories, right? So if I clicked on more news, it's the same as me clicking up here on news. Where is it? There. Okay. So same thing with, if you scroll down here, then you start to see some of the organic search results. We haven't talked yet about the difference between organic versus paid search results, but that's what you see when you search for products or anything related to a search and the results you see. So this is brands. So this is not brand specific, right? This is okay. I'm sorry. This is product specific or category specific. You could be searching for anything, backpacks, whatever it is you're looking for, purchasing. This is the search. Now, this is an example of searching for brands. Now, notice I searched for Activision exec. That was my search query on the left. On the right, I just searched for Uber. So let's just talk about this quickly. So this screenshot is from a while back, and no one really searches for Activision executive on a normal day, right? If somebody at Activision executive is in trouble and it's all over the news, then of course somebody who's interested in the stories might see it on television or might hear about it from a friend and then go to Google and search for it. And this is what they see. So, if you can see here, there's things like lawsuit. There was an executive who was, sexually harassing other people. There's other news around, executives leaving companies. So if you work in executive comms or corporate PR, you're on high alert when things like this happen, right? You're worried about what is happening in search and what media companies are picking up the story. So if I click on this, I bet you the results will be different. Again, this is from last year. So if I go back here, you can see other stories related to Activision execs. There's something about Sony here. There's a merger, acquisition, a lot of news about Sony. I don't know the details here. And if I go back here to Uber, you can see something slightly different. Whoops. You can see something slightly different. I just did a search for Uber. You can see friend remembers one of the victims from a bridge Uber rideshare crash. So there's, for companies like Uber or Airbnb, you can imagine, or even like hotels where there's a lot of crime. So think about the Comfort Inn or hotels that you might see in downtown San Jose. Even the bigger hotels, things happen all the time. So if you work for these hotels that people live in or move into temporarily, you need to be on high alert as it relates to local coverage. Maybe there's a crime that's being committed, a murder, drug dealing, things like that. Those are all things that, you're going to lose sleep at night because of. And you can see again, Uber here, you have other people charged $35,000 for a 15-minute Uber trip. It's pretty crazy what you would see if you click through to it. Again, different stories, because I just clicked to the search results. But you can kind of get an understanding like San Antonio. Here's a great example. San Antonio man accused of killing his Uber driver. Okay. Not the kind of news that you look forward to on a Monday morning if you work at Uber on the PR team. Okay. So I just want to show you some of the differences between like corporate PR, product PR, other things that are going to be relevant to you in working in PR. All right, so now I want to talk about the challenges of earned media. Similar to paid media, there are challenges, there's benefits, there's good things, there's bad things, there's easy things, there's hard things. And I want to talk about just earned media in general. And so one of the benefits of just getting earned media coverage is that it's credible and trusted. Now, I say that with a caveat because Over the last couple of years, especially in the political landscape, a lot of media coverage and journalists have, there's this huge conversation around fake news and bias. And the reality is that bias is in everyone. It's in all of us. And so for a journalist to say that he or she is not biased is kind of lying. Because if you admit that you're biased and try not to write in a biased way, that's different from saying that I'm not biased, but and writing biased content or pieces. So everyone is biased, but for the most part, it's credible and trusted. And the thing about media coverage is that it lives in Google forever, right? So if you think about, the way that we all kind of use the internet, right? We're Googling everything. Now, that behavior is changing, especially with your generation, Gen Z. You guys are using other platforms to search for information, search for where to eat and have lunch and what to buy and where to go. That used to be done in Google, and with older generations, it still is in Google. So whenever you're looking for a company name, and if you're going through a scandal, like this Activision example that you see, then you're going to have to be prepared for that, right? People are going to see it, even if they don't know about what's happening. So it lives, I like to say that it is the shelf life of media coverage is forever. It's always going to be in Google. The challenge is, and by the way, that's also a benefit too, because if you get good coverage, right, you're getting good product reviews. And that's why it's in the benefit it's in the benefit piece here, because, if somebody is writing good things about a product, and somebody Googles that product, as you can see from earlier, you are going to get a bunch of great press. Earned media is great because people will then maybe be influenced to buy products based on what they read about in the search results. The challenges are that you have no control. You could spend months pitching companies and pitching your company to a journalist, and they may not write about it. So you can't control when a CEO or an executive says, that they want coverage in the New York Times. I usually laugh, but I have to set expectations with clients, and you should too. It's not easy to get on the front page of the New York Times. Do something bad and it's easy, but trying to get positive press is not easy. Also, you could pitch a company, and it could also, you could pitch a product, or you could pitch any journalist, and their article about you might not be, it could be negative, or it might not hit on the benefits or the bullet points or the key messages that you want. So you could have all these talking points in your pitch, but when they write about it, they take a completely different angle. And that's the problem, right? You have no control, and it could be negative. It's also hard to scale because you can't just pitch. I mean, if you want to pitch 50 journalists, you have to pitch one at a time. You can't just send blanket emails or copy and paste emails and pitches and change names. I mean, that's not smart PR. So you have to, again, invest in building relationship. And so as you grow your career in PR, you are going to become friends with these people, right? These journalists, and you are going to, maybe have them on speed dial as you become more senior and have more experience. And so it becomes easier to scale at that point, but still, when pitching journalists, you have to take a very unique approach. You have to personalize it. And then lastly, it's hard to measure, right? Let's say you get on the cover of New York Times. How do you know, or the front page, how do you know if that really drove sales? Or how do you know, if the article doesn't link to your website, how do you then know if you actually drove web traffic to it? So you don't. Now, there are things you can do to get an idea of the impact that PR is making, and that's obviously, we're not going to talk about that in this class, but some of those things, that's the benefits, right? It's no control. You don't own the creative or the content, right? And it could turn into something that you don't want it to, right? And I've seen that happen where you're pitching a product, but then it turns into something about the brand, the business, or an executive, and it just kind of it goes down a path that you don't necessarily want it to go down. Also, earned media this is more earned content, right? Because you're not pitching Twitter in this regard. These are earned media conversations, right? So I just did a search for on the left of Verizon on Twitter, and you can see Comcast as well. And I just, these are negative conversations, right? It's just earned media content. Customer service teams are monitoring these channels to respond to these people. These are, and you can see here Verizon did so down here at the bottom. But this isn't really earned media in the way that we talked about earned media. Earned media is, you know, it's articles, it's coverage that you earn, right? You're pitching, you're putting together a press release or a pitch, email, you're picking up the phone, you're calling it, you're working hard, and they write about you. You've earned that media. So I hesitate on calling this earned media. This is just earned content, maybe as a way, or even shared content. We're going to talk about shared media, but these are just things to be aware of, right? On the right, you have a Reddit forum about Call of Duty and racism, and this actually forum is about the racism within Call of Duty, right? So the game, when you're playing on with other people, and the audio, there are people who are racist that are on these servers and things like that. So this is a Reddit forum talking about that. Very little, hard to manage that, right? So again, working in PR is a very complicated industry. It's not as easy as what most people might think it is. Understanding the media landscape. So it's important to understand some of this terminology, right? So when somebody says the business media or the financial media, right, it's not necessarily always the same. If you're managing, if there are company earnings or your stock price is taking a hit, you're probably going to be focused on the business media, right? That's like Fortune, Forbes, Yahoo Finance, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Business Insider. That's where they're talking about the business, corporate companies, stock market, earnings, revenue, etc. And there are specific journalists that write just about business within these business media publications. Then you have the tech media, right? So technology, this can include things like AI, artificial intelligence, chat GBT. It could also include, consumer technology like laptops and mics and video or webcams, things like that are for technology, but it's like equipment, right? So it's things you would buy at Target or on Amazon. It's technology, and that's publications like The Verge, TechCrunch, Gizmodo, VentureBeat, Read Write, and then you have your consumer media. So this is more of like your, I like to say it's the gossip, right? It's the Hollywood lifestyle, it's recipes, it's food, it's fashion, but there's also even fashion industry publications, which we'll talk about in a minute. So, but these are the popular ones, right? So like things that you probably have read before, People Magazine, Good Morning America, Today, Rolling Stone, BuzzFeed, The Zoe Report. Those are more consumer lifestyle media. Then you have on the bottom industry and trade media, right? So there are media publications that just write about marketing and advertising. There's MarTech, there's Adweek, there's Ad Age, there's DigiDay. Then you have travel related media publications like Travel Weekly, and I don't know all of them off the top of my head. Healthcare, there's hundreds of healthcare and biotech and pharmaceutical related healthcare media publications. There's cybersecurity media publications as well. So there's a bunch of different media outside of what you're looking at here that fall into these industries or trades. Then you also have fashion and beauty. So think of Elle, Cosmopolitan, those other specific fashion and beauty. You have telecom, food and beverage, wine.com, things like that. So it's important that you just understand that these are all different media publications, right? There's different industries, there are different journalists. So you as a PR person need to understand when a client comes to you and says, we have a story, you need to think about, well, okay, depending upon the client, what's the right place to pitch? Like, who do I know? If you're a consultant and you might know somebody at People and say, this is a great story for People, I'm going to call John Smith, who is one of the senior editors at People Magazine, that you can call and pitch the story to.
Okay, what happened to him there? See if Gary's on there.
You are going through.
Let's go back here.
All great talking points as you are going through interviews or you're going through an internship. It's good side conversation with a hiring manager or even your manager who works in PR. Just know these things. PR is easy, right? That is a misconception. And honestly, I used to think it was easy. It's not. It's actually very hard. You have to have severe attention to detail. Like you cannot, I talk about following instructions. If, there are crazy PR people who will look at everything that you do because it's to the public. It's published in a story. It's going to be published on a press release. So PR is easy. It's not. Working in PR is not easy either, especially if you work at an agency. If you go to an agency, you are starting from the bottom. You are a double AE or an AE, and you might not be doing quote unquote PR right away. You might be taking notes, managing the meetings, sending sending follow-up emails to clients. You're not going to start pitching the media right away. Now, if you're good and you've done your homework and you understand the media and if I were you, I'd be creating a media list right now. If you know what industry you want to go into, start following these journalists. Start understanding who writes for who and what they write about, and you can probably advance very quickly. Another misconception is that getting media coverage is easy, and the reality is it's not. Right now, if you work for Amazon or Apple or Google or a large company, it actually is easier to get coverage, right? Because there are specific reporters who are responsible for writing about your company. Like they are your official, not your official, but they are the official journalist for the New York Times or Bloomberg or Wall Street Journal about your company. So it's not easy, but again, if you want the right story with the right narrative that hits on all your message points, that's not easy, right? You have to establish relationships. You don't have control in PR. Now, that's it's true and it's not, right? So I put it in here as a misconception because a lot of people say that you don't have control, and it's a little bit, contradictory to what I said earlier, that you lack control. But you can control PR to an extent. Again, if you're good at relationships, if you are good at, I call it spin, and I'll talk about spin in a minute. But if you're good at kind of controlling the narrative about your company or product, you can control it a little bit, right? You can't have complete control of the end product of the article, but you can help drive it to an area that makes sense for your business or your client's business. Great PR can drive sales. I put that in here. It really can. It's very difficult to measure. Again, as I said earlier, if I read an article about the best headphones on the market and there are 5 to choose from, and then I don't buy a pair of headphones for 6 months, but the ones that I buy are from me seeing an ad, well, it's hard to attribute where that sale came from, right? So that's a big challenge in the industry called attribution, right? What marketing or communication vehicle is attributing to sales? Unless you're selling even if you're selling directly on your website, how did that person get to your website? Probably a search in Google. But why did they search? Well, maybe they saw an ad, or maybe they saw a commercial, or maybe a friend told them about the product. So it's really hard. It's a very dynamic buyer's journey, which we talked about a couple of classes ago. PR is just spin, and a lot of times it is. I'm going to be honest with you, but there can be a lot of good that comes from PR as long as I think you are transparent and authentic in how you're pitching the media. You don't have to worry about being it backfiring. Even though a lot of it is spin, there is a lot of truth and transparency in PR. There's no such thing as bad publicity, and you hear artists talking about that, mentioning that all the time, and that's false, right? Especially now with the cancel culture. I mean, that's still a real thing. It happens on both sides. So, this is a misconception. There is bad publicity for every company, right? And so, and the challenge is how do you measure it? How do you and manage it? In terms of measurement, this is an example of a dashboard, and this is built in Google Data Studio or Looker Studio, and it's dynamic. But a lot of, and this is an advanced kind of conversation related to it, but usually you're looking at a couple of things like volume of coverage, right? How many articles wrote about our company? How much engagement were on those articles? And then what's the share of voice? If I'm Apple and I had 1,000 pieces of coverage in January and Samsung had 500 pieces of coverage, well, I'm winning in share of voice. Now, obviously you have to ask yourself, is it negative coverage? Is it positive coverage? What types of media was it? So share of voice is the percent of coverage when compared to one or more competitors. So if you have 5 competitors that you're comparing coverage to, and if you're only looking at volume, then whatever the whatever percent, whatever the quantity of articles you have divided by the total of everyone in that data set would be the percent of share of voice. So very big, high level. We're not going to go deep into this, but the one thing that you should know is that you can measure it through volume of coverage and share of voice. Those are kind of the basics of measurement. The last thing I want to talk about, and I have a blog post here that I want to share with you, because this to me is something that you really should kind of think about. And regardless of if you work in PR or not, I mean, any type of communications or marketing, and this is a blog post that I wrote. So if you I'll drop the link as well in the homework assignment. But a couple of things that you just need to kind of remember as you're building your expertise and go into this field. These are 5 things you need to really focus on: understanding data, be a good storyteller, the gift of gab, relationships and understanding the value of those, and just strategic business. Okay, so I'm not going to go through and read this. I'm just going to stay here and just talk about these things really quickly. Understanding data is important. If you're good at math, if you love data and analytics, and you want to work in PR, you are going to get much farther in your career quicker. Let me take that back. You don't have to love data to go far in PR, but if you do, I think you can advance quicker and faster if you embrace data and use it not just to measure the performance of your campaigns, but also if you use it to inform your campaigns. Okay, so understanding data is a skill you need to learn. Be a good storyteller. We've talked about this. Write your personal narrative. The more you can understand the concepts of storytelling as it relates to yourself, the better you can talk about your company, the better you can talk and have a conversation over dinner with the reporter, or if you pick up the phone, you can, talk to them about the benefits of whatever it is you're trying to I say sell them, but whatever it is you want them to write about. The gift of gab is very similar to that, right? It's that, being able to influence, persuade, and really be assertive in how you're talking and having just that gift of gab. It's hard to define. Read the blog post. I think there's a lot more details there. Also, understanding the value of relationships, right? It's not just, in any relationship, I've mentioned this before in class, you have people who you put in 100% of the relationship, and you have the other person who puts in 50%. Well, that relationship will never last if both parties in the relationship are not putting the equal amount in. And so when you think about this from a media standpoint, you're pitching the media all the time. You may also just give them information, right? So even if it's not something specific about your company, if you have a valuable piece of content or insight that you just want to provide to a journalist, I mean, that is giving without any expectation of receiving anything in return. I talked about reciprocal altruism, right? So just, keeping that top of mind for yourself as a PR person, that there may be times when, you are just giving without any expectation of getting any coverage, but the relationship always returns 100-fold when you do it that way. And then lastly, strategic business consulting. So what I mean by that is, especially if you decide to work in corporate PR, you have to, understand the economy, stock price, even the supply chain. So, if you're working for a computer like Apple, you have to understand where you get all of your parts. So the microchips, the silicone, all the things that come from other countries. Well, you have to understand that, because there could be a story. If you're getting certain, raw materials from the Congo or other parts of Africa where people are dying, in these countries, and you're kind of benefiting it from a business standpoint, that's not a good look. And if the media finds out about it, or child labor, right, in parts of, Asian countries, not just Asian countries, but also in countries in South America, in parts of Europe, there's child labor. And so, are you building your tennis shoes or apparel from, benefiting off child labor. Like, you need to understand these things. So having just a broad understanding of business, and also culture, outside of just PR and marketing, you need to understand the larger context of kind of the industry that you work in from a PR standpoint. So anyway, hope this helps. Please take note.
Yeah. All right. That will end the lesson well, not for today, for this week. There's another one coming up. Hope it was engaging.